is enabling the law enforcement agencies as well, which is really nice. But over here, what I believe in is with AI and data can be the driver in accelerating justice, but it's leadership that defines the outcomes, right? So with so much access to personal data, right, how do you balance speed and efficiency with responsibility to uphold privacy and civil liberties?
And I think finding this balance, that is really the whole ball game. Privacy and civil liberties are always a key concern. I think this is the same is true in almost every country and police force around the world. And so speed and efficiency, that really becomes nothing then if you lose trust. You have to keep those two things in balance. And that means that every tool that we deploy has to be guided by clear policy. What we know is criminals don't have ethics. They're not running by the same code. They are running as fast as they can into this technology.
Welcome to Discover Dialogues Podcast, powered by TechDogs. The world of business and technology is evolving at breakneck speed. AI breakthroughs, digital transformation, and game-changing innovations are reshaping industries every day. On this show, we dive into the trends, ideas, and strategies driving the future. We're sitting down with industry leaders, innovators, and disruptors to bring you fresh insights, bold perspectives, and real conversations that matter. So plug in, tune in, and let's discover what's next.
Today on the show, we're joined by Ed Dolman, SVP and Head of EMEA at Cellebrite. Ed is at the forefront of transforming how law enforcement and public sector agencies harness digital intelligence to solve complex cases ethically, responsibly, and at speed. From AI and digital forensics to building values-first sales teams, this conversation is about leadership, responsibility, and the future of justice tech. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode of TechDogs Discover Dialogues. Ed, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Nikhil, really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
That's really nice. Just before we unwrap into the agenda of this today's podcast, we would like our audience to know your professional journey so far, right? And how has that shaped you till now? So can you please walk us through your professional journey till now, Ed?
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. So actually my background, my whole professional career is in tech. I didn't choose tech or sales. I actually just fell into both of those things coming straight out of education into my first sales role. I think as a lot of people, not sure where I wanted to go, but I am thankful every day that I'm in this industry. And I love still being in sales as well. Whilst I've got more of a general management position now, I'm still selling every day. I love spending time with customers. I really like solving problems and, helping customers solve their problems and the value that we can add. And I'm a huge believer in technology. Listen, not all technology is good. I think we'll probably discover as we talk through our conversation today that there are plenty of ways technology can be used for bad. But I'm a big believer in technology and that technology will solve some of the world's biggest problems. So it's been a privilege for me to spend my career here. For most of my career, most of those 30 years, I've worked actually for software companies, and I've worked across all of the different types of disciplines of sales that we have. So I've done both direct sales and partner sales. I've sold to small businesses. I've sold to mid-market, enterprise, and now I'm deeply ingrained in the public sector in the current role that I've got at Cellebrite. I've had the privilege of working for some fantastic software companies through that journey. So I started off at Symantec, and this was in the sort of what I now look back on as the quite innocent days of internet security, back when we were mostly selling yellow box Norton internet security. You probably remember if you ever bought a laptop from a shop, it normally came with a yellow box of Norton. And we were protecting from things like the love bug virus. Of course, internet security has now become a much, much more serious game, with country level cyber threats and huge amounts of cyber fraud, but it certainly felt a lot more innocent back in those days. I then moved from Symantec to VMware, where I spent 6 years just through the enormous growth of virtualization, which was the precursor, of course, to cloud computing as we now know it. From there, I decided I wanted to move into the world of data. I could see even at that time that data was becoming ever increasingly important. And so I wanted to, go into a different segment again and get some expertise there. I worked for Splunk for 2 years, which was all about machine data. And then I moved from Splunk to Tableau, where I got to solve what, in my opinion, is one of the best business intelligence platforms anywhere. It's a fantastic product. And I spent 3 years there before we got acquired by Salesforce and 3 years afterwards. So I almost got sort of two company experiences in one, with the independent Tableau and then becoming of a $32 billion, 60,000 person behemoth that is Salesforce. Both very, very interesting experiences. And then, after I left Salesforce, I took a good look around, working out what I wanted to do next. And as I've gone through my career, purpose has become ever more important to me, trying to find a company with a powerful mission. And as I'll explain to you as we go through our talk today, Cellebrite definitely has that. So I've been fortunate through that time to already been with three companies that were pre-$1 billion to post-$1 billion. And I'm looking to catch lightning a fourth time with Cellebrite.
Thank you so much for bringing up the point, how internet security has changed throughout the years,
Yeah.
in terms of, what it was before and what it is now. It is a completely different ball game altogether, right?
100%.
It is evolving at a rapid stage, the entire internet ecosystem is in a chaos, and
Yeah,
I believe with the rapid innovation of generative AI, it is adding to the whole problem. And
it is.
I believe that Celebrate operates at the intersection of law enforcement, AI, and digital privacy, right? Where every
Correct.
decision can have a real world consequence, right? And in the next coming up segment, we'll explore that on more, right? The shift from physical to digital evidence isn't
Yep.
just a change in tools, it's a shift in investigative mindset, right? And I believe that you focus more on data, not only data but better data that you feed into the systems, right? So my next question to you, Ed, would be, how are mobile and cloud based data sources transforming the way way cases
Yeah.
are solved today?
Yeah, a great question. Perhaps before I sort of dive into the specific answer to that, perhaps it's useful just for your listeners if I just give a short intro to Cellebrite. Let
Yes,
you know
definitely.
who we are as a company. So Cellebrite is not a new company. We've been around for nearly 20 years now. We've got an annual revenue of about $400 million a year. We're floated on the NASDAQ. So, we're a well-established company. But we're a company with this incredible mission, a mission really like one I haven't come across before in my days in tech. And the mission is, we protect communities, nations, businesses, and our role is to make the world a safer place. That is our stated mission. And the whole Cellebrite team is really driven, again, like nothing I've ever seen before. We wake up every day and go to bed every night, really focused on delivering this mission. But at the same time, we're very clear on our role in that mission. The people who are really making the world a safer place are our customers. It's those on the front line, whether it's the police, as we'll talk about, law enforcement today, or others, border security, national defense, intelligence agencies. We count all of those among our customers. They are the ones at the front line really making the world a safer place. Our role in that is to ensure that we provide all of those on the front line with cutting edge technology so that they're able to do their jobs and keep society safe from bad actors. So that's a little introduction into Cellebrite. Now, why is this important? It's important because the reality is the criminal landscape is changing. You spoke about it. We've got all of these different crimes that are now rising to the surface. Sexploitation is the fastest growing crime amongst young people these days. Terrible crimes. These are crimes where scammers get into the laptops or the iPads or the phones of young people, normally teenagers. It's not only teenagers, but it affects this age group more than any others, in their bedrooms, trying to scam them, trying to take their money. And there's awful stories of people, teenagers taking their lives as they think that there's no other option, as they're being blackmailed. There is cybercrime on an industrial scale. So 80% of large businesses say that in the last 12 months, they have been affected by a scam. For those of your listeners, viewers in the UK, Marks and Spencer's here, one of the biggest chain stores that we have, was affected hugely by a big outage, trying to be held for ransom by cyber scammers, and their business was down for weeks, costing them billions of dollars. There's the rise of deep fakes, so it's becoming ever increasingly difficult to tell. I can tell you this is the real me. This is not a deep fake. This is how I look. But increasingly, can we believe what we see? And of course, deep fakes. And there's again many really interesting stories of a deep fake of a CEO. There was a national company a couple of years ago, and they got millions of dollars. I think it's tens of millions of dollars just from one single video call pretending to be the CEO, and all of the people that needed to sign off let that money go. And of course, all of these different crimes are just being aided now by AI as well. If you think about in the past, we would used to, again, we sort of talked about the past earlier on in terms of Symantec. Well, we'll all remember soon the old days when we used to be able to detect scamming emails in our inbox because there would be spelling mistakes or grammatical errors or something. Now you could use ChatGPT or a large language model of your choice, and it can speak 150 languages natively and write you a perfect scam email in about 2 seconds. So no longer can we all rely on those things. Now, for policing, of course, not only are there these new crimes, but all of the physical or forever crimes that we know, terrible crimes like murder or sexual assault or theft, all of those still continue as well. So they've got to deal with these new crime types, and they've also got to continue to prosecute and keep the public safe from all of the existing crime types that we've got. And so that is a real challenge. Now, the good news is for law enforcement that technology can come to the aid of that. And this is where we play a big part. And about every decade or so, there is a revolution in investigations. If you think back to the 1980s, it was fingerprints. So before fingerprints, it was almost impossible to find, one single piece of physical evidence that would then, with a high level degree of certainty, say whether a person had done a crime or not done a crime. Then in the 90s, we had DNA. Again, a massive quantum leap in terms of the ability of taking physical evidence and finding out whether someone was involved in a crime. Then we had CCTV in the 2000s with the surveillance state and the beginning of that. Body cam footage then came in the 2010s, and we're still in that era now. More and more we're seeing police using body cams. And then in the 2020s, that's really the age of digital intelligence and digital investigations. And this is where we are now. We're at the halfway point of this revolution. And again, it is my personal opinion that this will be the most meaningful revolution of all. And that's because we will start to see now in the second half of this decade an exponential leap forward in terms of the efficacy of the investigations because of the use of AI. It's just going to allow investigators to do a whole lot more.
Definitely. I really appreciate your mission of, protecting communities and helping the law enforcement to become better at what they do, because I feel right now AI has become a double-edged sword, right? Wherein even the bad actors are using it, even the good actors are using it, in both of them, in their area of expertise, and and bad actors are using it in all negative ways in terms of making, as you said, right, the spelling mistakes. It's helping people write emails, and such sophisticated emails in terms of the front person will not even realize that, someone is scamming me. And to a point where, we reached on deep fakes, and you have to explain, I'm not a deep fake. This is me. But this could be done by a deep fake as well, if you train the deep fake that, okay, this is what you have to say. But definitely, it is very important at this time and age wherein, we have these guardrails in place in terms of, in terms to secure our community in much effective ways, because the future generation, the current generation, and the old generation, right, all of them needs to be aware of all of these potential scams that they're having, because cyber criminals are evolving their pathways daily, right, and they're becoming more sophisticated
100%.
with their attacks, with their approaches. In terms of the front person, the victim will not even realize that they've been scammed unless it has an impact on their daily life, right? And
Exactly.
talking in terms of the law enforcement space, right, and using AI for it, right? I believe it's not about replacing people; it's about multiplying their impact, right? So, in what ways can you help us, our audience, understand, right? AI has actually assisted in reducing case backlogs and improve the response time for law enforcement agencies.
Sure. Let's just perhaps if I just give a quick overview at this point of what's Cellebrite's technology platform. I'll keep it brief. I'll make sure it's not technical, but we have a technology platform. We call it digital investigation platform that we provide to our customers to really allow them to take advantage of all of these digital assets, all this digital DNA that they're able to collect and turn that into actionable intelligence. And there are three primary pillars that we're focused on. The first one is insights. Insights is around collecting and review. So think of mobile phones predominantly. That's really where we've made most of the growth in the company, and most of our strategic customer relationships have come from that. And if you think of that, and that's because there are many sources of digital assets, but the mobile phone has very quickly risen to the top of the hierarchy. And that's because we all have one. I'm sure you have one on you today. I'm sure all the rest of the team behind the scenes do at least one. There are more mobile phones than there are people on the planet now today. And of course, the mobile phone is just enormously technologically capable, and it holds an enormous amount of storage. So I don't know if back in 2002, there was what is widely regarded as the first smartphone was launched. Do you have any idea how much onboard storage that device had? 2002. What would you guess?
It was less, around 16 GB, probably even
Yeah.
8 GB. It started with the smaller, and now we are on clouds.
It was, yeah. So actually, in 2002, it was 8 meg, believe it or not. So it was that small. But by the time you get to 2007, which was the launch then of the iPhone, that was the year the iPhone came out. Then you started to see 16 gig, and then it's just gone up and up and up and now. And now a terabyte is common. 2 terabytes is possible in a mobile phone. And so you can imagine just that we're talking on a 2 terabyte phone. We are talking hundreds of thousands of images, tens of thousands of hours of videos, an untold number of web chats, WhatsApp messages, voice notes that have been left for people. There's geolocation data, and I could go on and I could go on, I could go on. But, effectively one single device, and most criminal cases have 5 to 7 devices on average that need to be, but most of those physical device, every single physical device literally holds a treasure trove of information. So much so now that we are seeing more and more no physical evidence is needed to solve a crime. So we have a program called 24 Hours in Police Custody, which runs in the UK. Again, if any of your UK viewers, I can highly recommend it. It's a Channel 4 production. I watched the latest one of that recently, and that whole case was solved just using digital DNA. No physical DNA was found. The crimes were committed 2 years before, but everything was taken from digital devices, mostly from CCTV and, of course, mobile phones. And that case was solved, and the person responsible was locked up. And so this is where Insights comes in. We're able to take these really complex devices, we're able to unlock them, extract what we need, whether it's a whole full file system or it's just a selective amount of it, depending on the case. And then we're able to decode all of those applications and all of that data to present it in a usable form for investigators. An extraordinarily powerful thing to do. Because again, if you can imagine, without a tool like Cellebrite, first of all, you'd have to have the password to even be able to get into the phone. But also, if you can imagine a device with 100,000 images, how long would it take one person having to swipe through all of those one by one to try and find their way through? So first pillar is insights. It's all about particularly mobile data. The second pillar then is Guardian. Guardian is our cloud first product. You can only have Guardian on as a cloud product, whereas our other products do have a hybrid option. And Guardian is all about collaborating on cases. It's all about sharing between teams, whether that's investigators or prosecutors or whoever else might be involved in a case. It's about managing, and actually we're increasingly now bringing AI to that as well. So we have our first AI use case in there. It's called Chat Explain, and it will allow you to do some relatively simple now, but getting more sophisticated large language questioning of the data that's in Guardian. And then the final piece is Pathfinder. Pathfinder is when you bring together multiple data sources. It might be multiple mobile phones. Think of a drug smuggling ring, for example. There was a very interesting case recently prosecuted. Actually, you can look it up on the news now. The prosecution happened at the beginning of July in Ireland with Garda. They're the police there, and they made one of the biggest drug busts ever in the world. $5 million worth of cocaine. It was 2.2 tons. Very, very sophisticated operation. And again, required highly sophisticated technology to be able to break that gang down and make that sort of incredible drug bust and basically keep the citizens of Europe and probably the world safer in terms of the amount of drugs that were taken off the street. Pathfinder allows those sorts of sophisticated analysis to happen, both on multiple phones, but also on multiple other data points, bring in to be able to find the known knowns, the known traces, but also the unknowns that humans are not very good at spotting patterns. So this again is where technology comes in to be able to help them. So that's the Cellebrite platform, and this is around the acceleration of what an investigator can do. Right? AI doesn't replace. You said it. AI does not replace investigators. It accelerates them. And so what we're trying to help investigators do is the tasks that used to require high levels of manual review, and already described flicking through photos to try and find an image that you want, but then to try and find link analysis or correlation between different evidence or data points like the time of the day and a geolocation stamp. These are things that are really difficult, if not impossible, for individuals to do. But with the use of technology, then we can increase or decrease the time that it takes, increase the efficacy of those investigations, and help agencies act in a timely manner to be able to reduce those, reduce the backlogs, and obviously reduce the time it takes to prosecute those cases. I've got another couple of examples. If you want me to go into some others, I'll pause there. But if you want me to give you another couple of examples, I'm happy to do so.
You can go with one, and then we can proceed.
Yeah.
With one.
Yeah. So one of the other use cases I think we're personally really proud of in terms of how AI can help is in the reduction in psychological harm for those officers that are looking at some of the most sensitive material. So you can imagine some of the most horrendous crimes that are committed against the most vulnerable in society. The child sexual abuse crimes. Officers have to look through when there's a case. Officers have to look through every single one of those photos, or they did in the past. Now there are sophisticated data sets that use a thing called hash sets, which allow the very worst images to be classified and graded, and technology can help in terms of sorting those when a new suspect's phone is taken and some of those images are found. The use of AI now can log those so they can still be logged in the evidential stack without an individual officer having to go through every single one of those. Just enormous reduction in terms of the trauma for those people, as I said, doing an amazing job trying to solve some of the worst crimes that are committed against people.
That is really great, in terms of reducing the time, because I believe sometimes the justice needs to be accelerated, right? Because the victim needs to have the peace of mind wherein, okay, whatever happened to him was wrong, but at the end, the law enforcement ensured that the stringent steps are taken to ensure that this does not happen to somebody else as well. And I'm
Absolutely
really glad that AI is able to help in this space, and a few other spaces as well where it is really important. But there are times when public in the public opinion, they paint AI as a mysterious force, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that you're an advocate of explainability and transparency, especially in domains like justice, right, that you deal in. So can you please let our audience know what are the biggest misconceptions about using AI in this space from your experience?
So I think the biggest, I've thought of, I think there's two that I can think of from a customer's perspective. It's amazing. AI has been around for years. You know that. I don't need to explain that to you. People even how long have we been using text autocorrect on our phones? I mean, that's just a form of machine learning and algorithm, same as AI. Suddenly, this terminology of AI, which does describe what's coming next and the future of AI and some very, very exciting things. But you would be amazed how many customers I still go to that as soon as we start talking about AI, they immediately think Minority Report or Terminator. I mean, it's kind of crazy. They go to these doomsday scenarios of what AI is going to bring. And of course, that completely misses the point of what AI is. I've talked a little bit about it already, but when I go and talk to customers now, I say to them, imagine if I can come to you and your teams and I'll say, I can give you a superpower. And that superpower tomorrow could make you 10 times more productive and efficient and effective in the job that you've got to do, with a greater efficacy rate in terms of your goals or prosecution or finding whether people are guilty or not guilty. And then next week it will be 100 times more effective, and in a year it could be 1,000 times more effective. That is the promise of AI. They would obviously rip my arm off for a capability that delivered like that, but that is what AI gives. This is not about predictive policing, which I think again is a public concern that somehow, which is the minority report scenario again, somehow AI is going to be used to try and stop people from committing crimes before they happen. That's not it. It's about how do we provide the teams that are on the front line trying to make our society safer every single day with a superpower to make them as effective as we possibly can. And of course, it's in all countries that we serve, taxpayer funded as well, right? We should want that as a tax-paying society, that all of the public services that we use are as efficient as possible. And I would love that in a future that actually this technology became so powerful that it could be a deterrent, not just to help afterwards, but and not try to be predictive, but be a deterrent. You imagine if we took AI and how that's evolving and added in quantum computing, which I know nothing about other than I think it's like quantum physics. If you think you understand that, you definitely don't. So, but the unbelievable advances that are coming in computing could make it possible that the technology becomes so good that criminals just think, I will not commit this crime. There is no point in me committing this crime because the chances of me being caught and prosecuted are so high with the tools that law enforcement now has that it's just not worth me doing. So I hope that that's in our future. But it's, first misconception is missing the point about AI and that it will give teams a superpower. The second misconception that I hear a lot is that AI is going to take my job. And I think this is a complete falsehood as well. In my opinion, it's just not going to happen. There is no police force in the world that is sitting there today thinking, we've got too many officers or we've got too many investigators. We might give some back. We don't need this many. Every single one of them is understaffed, and budgets continue to be under pressure. We've seen in NATO countries now there's more money floating into defense, and that's going to mean less money going into other public services. And so those jobs are not going. It's about, as I said, making those jobs as productive as possible. And I also do not think there is any time, certainly in the foreseeable future, where AI is going to be prosecuting or examining cases on their own. There will always be, we talk about human in the loop. You may have heard that as a phrase. We absolutely believe there will always be a human in the loop. But the best AI is going to help those in a transparent way that's going to be auditable, with the provenance of the data being completely exposed for everybody to see. It will just help point them in the right direction, find articles for them, and as I said, to make them much more productive.
I'm glad that you made the point that AI and machine learning and large language models have been existent since ages, but it got hyped when generative AI came into picture. Like ChatGPT. ChatGPT was a number, I believe, into the entire space where everybody started talking about AI, but they did not focus on that AI was in existence. Like industries like yours, plus financial, all of this have been using AI since a long time, and their use cases are very are successful as well, right? Using all of this, but
I think so.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the other thing that's worth noting, and I think why large language models have so much potential is, again, I meet a lot of investigators who are they're experts in policing, they're experts in investigation, they're not experts in technology, and that's why they need the help of companies like Cellebrite, because that's not their core domain expertise. And this is where a large language model can help. If you can suddenly start to take, again, all of that myriad of data that I've just explained is available on a single phone, let alone multiple devices or different data sources. And you can start, as an investigator, questioning that, using the language of that investigation, using the language, some of the terminology or the acronyms that are used within crime, fighting crime, or within police forces. That can just, again, massively increase the capability of that investigator. And they don't have to have the technical expertise to be able to drive a product from a different user interface.
For sure, like AI is giving investigators speed, right? But this speed cannot come at the cost of trust, right? And as we've already discussed about, the exponential surge of data, right? It has been increasing constantly, right, with day, right? So much access to personal data, right? How do you balance speed and efficiency with responsibility to uphold privacy and civil liberties?
I mean, that is a great question, and I think finding this balance, that is really the whole ball game. This is what we have to achieve, between technology providers like Cellebrite and our core customers and the members of the public. If I think about I live in the UK. If I think about UK policing is based on the premise of policing by consent. It has to be. It's police only exist because the public allow policing to be done. And so, privacy and civil liberties are always a key concern. I think this is the same is true in, almost every country and police force around the world. And so speed and efficiency, that really becomes nothing then if you lose trust. It's you have to keep those two things in balance. And that means that every tool that we deploy has to be guided by clear policy. It has to be auditable. The evidence has to be traceable. We have to be able to provide that playback. There has to be role-based access. You can't suddenly give access to everybody for everything. I talked a little bit about Guardian, our Collaborate platform, where we still need to have the checks and balances in there to ensure people can't accidentally come in and view evidence of another case or cross-contaminate or see things that they're not able to see. And so it's really clear, really key that all of those things are in place. This is one of the areas where I think my personal opinion is on this. I think policing is too slow right now. I think they're too far behind, because what we know is criminals don't have ethics. They're not running by the same code. They are running as fast as they can into this technology. We've already talked about a few examples of deepfakes or different ways of scamming. They are not sitting by waiting, living by some sort of structured rules for this to be done. And so it's critical that law enforcement gets on the front foot with this and really starts thinking about and acting on how to use this technology. I'll give you a story. I went to an event recently. It was a World Police Summit event. It was massively attended by hundreds of police forces from across the world. I went into the first session. It was all about AI. It was around, a fireside chat session. They had 5 experts from across the world, very senior people from policing. Every single one of them talked only about the rules they were thinking of putting in place to prevent really the use of this technology, the use of AI. Not a single one of them gave one use case on how they would be using it or how they were already using it, just examples of how to lock it down. And so if I was sat in that audience as a criminal, fortunately I'm not a criminal, but if I was sitting in an audience as a criminal, I would be literally, rubbing my hands thinking, well, this is the time I'm going to go and do whatever I want to do, because there is no way that this crowd of people are coming after me anytime soon. And so, we have to get ahead of that. Law enforcement, and as I said, we're trying to make sure we provide cutting edge technology to law enforcement to be able to do this, need to be on the front foot. That doesn't mean that you lose sight of the policy or the auditability or the role-based access or the explainability. You have to be able to do that, but we've got to move extremely fast. And there are things that we're doing to try and help with this. We introduced technology into Insights recently, which I would describe as take what you need. Don't try and take everything. This is where I think the public start to get a bit of disquiet sometimes. Well, why would I hand over my phone? If I'm a witness or a victim, do I want to hand over my phone that contains all my secrets, or do I in fact just want to give the one piece of information? And so we can very quickly and easily say, just take photos from this date stamp, or any evidence that is acquired at this geolocation, or that you don't have to take everything. You can just really selectively say, I'm just going to take this piece. That's all we need. Everything else is completely invisible to law enforcement and they can't do it. So that's just one example, and we'll continue to make sure that we have that at the front of our minds. We spend a lot of money every year on research and development to make sure, and we're constantly thinking of ways of doing that. We also, by the way, take the ethical use of our technology extremely seriously. Mm-hmm. So we don't sell in every country. We're very deliberate about that. We've put in place mathematical models around things like human rights, law and order, democracy scores, and we then created our own mathematical model to then say who we would and wouldn't sell to, because we wanted to make sure that our technology was only going to be used in the right way if it was used at all. And we formed an external ethics committee actually to help us with that. So we've got 7 experts who are from around the world, very highly educated and esteemed people that are external to the business, but they advise us on this stuff all the time. So we also have a personal responsibility as a company to make sure that we help our customers focus on this.
In terms of, as you said, like criminals do not have any ethics. They just
Yeah, they
behind
don't.
their malicious agendas, and they'll
Yeah,
do whatever comes their way in terms of achieving those agendas, because at the end they are in to achieve their agendas, and there's nothing
yeah,
can stop. AI is enabled them. AI is enabling them as well. AI is enabling the law enforcement agencies as well, which is really nice. But over here, what I believe in is, with AI and data can be the driver in accelerating justice, but it's leadership that defines the outcomes, right? So let's
yeah,
now zoom out and explore the values, philosophies, and people first practices, that help you
yeah,
and the customers of yours to achieve their goals, right?
yeah,
And when I was doing a research on your profile, Ed, I've seen that you've scaled teams across startups, scale ups, and mature tech companies, right? What's
yeah.
that leadership principle has stayed constant for you?
I would say the first thing is I'm always people first.
Mm-hmm.
Always. I absolutely believe that the best way you can look after your customers is by having the best people and having those people energized and driven and engaged, and that's what will deliver a customer first business. But I'm always people first. It's not my saying, but one I 100% subscribe to is that is if you have great people, you can achieve anything. You can have a great product and a great strategy, but if you've got poor people, you can still fail.
Mm-hmm.
Equally, you can have a poor product and a poor strategy, but if you've got amazing talent, they can be successful. They find a way. So I really think being people first, focusing on that first and foremost all the time is critically important. Secondly, for me, I'm guided by my core values, so I'm very open about those. They are trust, authenticity, accountability, and equality. I have them on my LinkedIn profile, so if anyone wants to look me up, they can see they're right there in my introduction as well. And so I would say they have led me wherever I've been, no matter the size of the company. It's understanding your own core values and leaning on those just works all of the time. And so as I say, I share them with people I don't know through my LinkedIn profile. I share them with my team, but I think staying true to those values has always helped me.
For sure. And as tech evolves, so must the leaders, right? In a world that is moving fast with AI and the other technological developments that are happening,
Yeah,
what is because we spoke about what has been constant with you till now.
yeah.
What are the leadership traits that will be more critical over the next decades, and what advice would you give the other professionals entering into the space? What are the traits that they need to have in terms of having a
Yeah. Again, another great question, and I think there's a lot of people thinking about this all the time. I'm a father to three boys, so I've got my oldest is 18, and I've got 16 and 10. So I've got three children now, sort of coming to the end of their education or thinking about university, or we start to talk about careers and what they want to do. And it is quite hard to be able to advise them what in the age of AI, what are going to be the most important jobs and what are careers. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and some of these are going to have to work out. But I like the question because I think again it focuses on, even with AI, what are the traits that successful individuals will have? Number one for me is drive. And I believe a drive can't be taught. Drive is your internal battery, your internal motivation. I don't need a hand on my back every day. I've got that energy. I've got that desire. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to run through walls. I'm going to solve problems. I'm going to learn. Drive really covers a lot of those things. And those who have drive, I believe will succeed. Again, they will find a way. They'll find a way to harness that technology, not let it overcome them and fall away. Um, Authenticity, I've talked about already. Authenticity for me is being yourself. It's being comfortable to be yourself. It's encouraging others to turn up as themselves, not having them pretend to be something that they're not. It's consistency. Whether I'm happy or sad, I show up like this. Whether times are good or bad, I show up the same way. It's about making sure that you show up and you are true to your authentic self so people know how to deal with you. One of the other things I have in authenticity is no politics as well. Just, don't think politics. I think politics can be a poison in any workplace. And so, we've all got to work hard to keep that out. Networks and, connections with people is human nature, but politics can be pretty destructive. So authenticity, I think, is going to be key. And I don't see anytime soon where AI is going to even be able to mimic authenticity in any sort of meaningful way. Now, I'm
those?
sure at some point I may well be wrong about that, but certainly in the foreseeable future, I don't think that's the case. Data-driven is the third one, I think. And, I've always been data-driven. I talked to you about, making a conscious decision to go and work for some data companies. But with the huge amounts of data that's out there, you increasingly being data-driven is just going to become a superpower for people who are good at it, because you've got to be able to cut through all of the data that's out there. You've got to be able to analyze and use that to make decisions. So decisive, I had as another one. Taking decisions, being decisive, not letting the huge amount of information that is out there overwhelm you. Instead, being able to process that and make decisions is key. And then resilience is the last one. Resilience is one where again, will AI replace resilience in human beings? Again, I'm not sure anytime soon, but resilience is going to be key, and that comes to overcoming, the inevitable good and bad that happens, and again being able to push through any barriers. So those are the kind of five. Drive, authenticity, data-driven, decisive, and resilience would be my advice.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I can find myself in some of them at different intensities, but I'm glad that I have all of them. But thanks so
Good.
much for highlighting them. So
Yeah.
we have covered the strategic, the ethical, and the visionary. But leadership is also deeply personal, right? So before we wrap up today, Ed, we would like to shift some gears and uncover the human side of Ed.
Yep.
So from morning rituals to life philosophies, this is a quick rapid fire round. We want you to be really candid and
Yep.
So whenever
Okay.
you're ready, let's hit it.
Let's go.
Perfect. Coffee, tea, or something stronger to fuel your day?
Actually, I gave up caffeine fairly recently. So I used to drink coffee, and that was too strong. And then I drink tea, and then now I don't have any caffeine. What really fuels my day is exercise. So I get up. I'm a morning person. I get up early in the morning. I exercise. I feel great after exercising. So that's my fuel.
If an alien landed on Earth, what's the first food you'd offer them to try?
I think you can't look past a great burger, personally. So I love a burger and fries. Maybe that's a really lowbrow thing to offer to an alien, but they're delicious. So that's probably where I'd go.
And how do you usually unplug after a high stake week?
So I'm still fortunate I'm able to play football. I'm a massive football fan, or soccer, depending on which part of the world you come from. I'm a huge Liverpool fan, and I'm still able to play. So I was 50 this year, so I don't know how many years of football I have left in me. My knees tell me every week that it's not a good idea. It takes me a few days to recover, but I love it, and it's the perfect way for me to finish. I play on a Friday, play with the same group of people for the last 20 years. 90 minutes of football, and I can forget about all the troubles of the week.
That's really nice. What a piece of tech that you cannot live without?
I'm going to say noise cancelling headphones. So I feel that that's one of the best. Maybe it's from a social aspect. It's not one of the best inventions, but I absolutely love noise cancelling headphones. So especially for someone who travels a lot, it's just great to be able to focus or sleep on an aeroplane now, because I can cancel out the noise. So yeah, that's where I'd go to. I'd hate to be without them now.
What's a guilty pleasure TV show or movie that you repeatedly watch?
What's a guilty pleasure? I think probably we watched there was a series called Riders, which we watched recently, which is based on an old Jilly Cooper novel from the 80s. And I'm a massive fan of the 80s, having grown up through them. So that was a guilty pleasure. It was pretty cheesy, but very, very enjoyable, and had some very iconic things from the 80s. So I loved that.
If you weren't in tech, what career path would you have chosen?
So the truth is I don't know, because I've been in tech my whole life for 30 years. But what's really interesting is so I actually didn't go to university. That wasn't my path. I finished after sort of college exams, and then decided to move into the world of work. And that's when I just, as I said earlier on, fell into sales and tech. If I was going to go to university, I was looking at criminology courses. And so in some degree, I feel like I've almost come full circle. I'm not a criminologist. I'm not an expert in, this field, but having ended up at a company that helps people in this field, it really feels like a privilege to have done. And as I said, feels like I've kind of come full circle from my tech career and found myself back at where my early interest was.
One last question before I let you go.
Yeah.
A travel location that's still on your bucket list.
So one of the locations that's been on my bucket list for a long time is Bali, and I'm going in 2 weeks. So I can't wait. So yeah,
Very beautiful.
I decided I've never been. So we're going to Indonesia, and we're going to spend a few days in Singapore, and then we're going to go to Indonesia. We're going to go to Bali and another island called Sumba. I've never been to Indonesia before. I can't wait. I'm taking the whole family. So yeah, so that's definitely going to be a great one to tick off.
I hope you have a great time, Ed. And that's a wrap up for another insightful episode of Discover Dialogues. Thank you for not only unpacking the technology, but also reminding us that heart of every investigation, every decision, and every innovation, there's a human story, right? And we need to protect it. Any parting words do you have for our audience before we let you go today?
No, I think just thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and let's keep believing in technology and push the word forward. So thank you again.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Ed, today.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.